So we get to have the first talk for the day. Gentlemen, remember this is a one-act play, 4 parts.
Didn't we have presentations first?
I think you have presentations as well.
Yeah.
Which we should probably move out the way for. Your presentations are here.
What?
Do you want to shift over?
It's your name.
Yeah. So my name's Bryan Hugill. I also have a farm as well. I'll be moderating this discussion with these two gentlemen. Over here we have Cliff, who's an Australian that runs a farm in southern Laos. Ivan has a restaurant in Singapore. Okay. You can read their bios online. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But basically we're going to talk about how do farmers and restaurants talk to each other. So you guys have 5 minutes each to present yourselves.
Go.
Ready? Go.
Bridging the divide.
Okay, who's talking first?
We'll close that gap.
Would you like to start as the producer?
Sure, I think my slides should be on their way.
Okay.
With a remote.
Ka-ting.
Is that it?
I have absolutely no idea how that
The
works.
green button works.
Okay.
It means go. So I'll be briefly introducing you to our little project we started, Canterbury Organic, an attempt to produce excellent vegetables and send them to excellent chefs on a local level. Now, I don't have much time, so I have to flick through, and wanted to present an understanding of some of the issues we have, and the big one for me is pests. And I've got these picture of these beautiful heirloom carrots up here. 3 months it took them to get to this big, a lot of nurturing. Underground at the same time, the termites were getting in there. What do? My loss as a farmer to go and pull these out and feel the devastation. What's the chef going to say to me? Where's my carrots? So the whole concept here is that we've got to work together because I've got issues, they've got issues. We've got to be able to find some balance and understanding, and often the distance is a difficult thing, but we all work with the same concept, excellent products, and meeting each other's needs. The solutions to things like this, there are solutions out there. Conventional farming uses them, but I would not want anybody to eat that. The contamination from a residual soil insecticide to stop termites doing damage to my carrots would be horrific. It would be completely unethical. So I'll live with this so that we don't have to have a contaminated product going. Organic farming, yeah, it's great in theory, but as an organic farmer, it's tough. You have to deal with a lot of difficulties. Beetroots, termites like them too. And interestingly, when I'm trying to find an organic solution to termites eating carrots, the best thing I can come up with is that people eat termites and say they taste like carrots. So it's such an unusual thing. Maybe it'll go away, but carrots, they're better now. I've got them growing in a different area. The point, I suppose, to make about organic farming, I guess, is that it's more difficult than conventional farming. So it shouldn't really be compared to conventional farming. There's more infrastructure involved because you have to do exclusion. There's a lot more input, and we grow primarily organics as well, which are much lower yielding, although the taste is a lot better. And that's something I won't compromise on. But when you have an organic and heirloom product, it's not always going to be looking the same. It's not always going to be completely free of blemish. And the quantities may vary from time to time, seasons, pests, external factors, environment. We get frost where we are in the Bolivian Plateau. But we're going to have an excellent product of some sort for somebody to appreciate. And part of the appreciation concept is flexibility. Back. Sorry. Flexibility. When we have a relationship with the chef, it's important the chef gets a certain product, certain quantity, certain quality, at a certain time. And although everything in one farmer's power to do that, there's always too many factors trying to get in the way of it. So a little bit of flexibility, variability, substitutability between different products of different types is excellent. Now, I wouldn't ask an Italian chef to take chervil as an alternative, but some of our chefs, in particular, our primary customer of variable product, Arnie at Bunker, is so flexible that I can get so much stuff to him, and he just loves it all the time, with all the different stuff that he gets, new things all the time, and he gives us an appreciation of it, which brings about pride, motivation, and the continuation of that, and having to be able to fill orders all the time with different products, or something interesting, or something special, or something that's going to be difficult to impossible to get unless you fly it in, which we don't do. We do it like a local land transport system. Because we have a climate that doesn't exist in many places in Southeast Asia, we're able to use land transport to get specialty cold climate vegetables down to places like Bangkok without using planes. Variability, conventional egg. Flavor is the big thing. And spoilage. We have some issues with spoilage. Of course, not all our vegetables are going to be perfect. I do my best to send the best ones, but we always get quite a lot of uglies, we call them. But fortunately, I always find a use for them. Our neighbours have ducks and chickens and a big family. They take lots of uglies. I give away uglies to other people as bribes and favours for certain services provided, or to get discounts, things like that. And Panda, she's really big on eating uglies too. Sometimes she doesn't even know it. Generally, she doesn't eat them raw. She does get them cooked and presented nicely to her. So she's a big consumer. And what I wanted to, I don't know what the time limit's going like here, but in order to avoid going over, I wanted to get this slide up there and say the whole thing about being able to produce and continue producing is about having a relationship. A farmer, especially a small farmer, is not going to be able to be producing a product in the same manner as a supermarket will. So expect a relationship to be different. The best thing is about feedback, continuous communication about what the product is like, how it's like to grow. Some things that a farmer can know in advance are going to be difficult with upcoming seasonal changes or supply issues, pest problems. And I think it's important that chefs understand these things will happen, but if we have a constant communication, it's possible to know in advance, to compensate, to substitute, to outsource, to try and keep the continuity going of having a product we can be proud of. It relies on having a relationship that we can rely on to improve it, to keep it consistent, and to be proud of it as owners of something special, something that makes people go, yeah, I can't eat normal food anymore. And that's happened many times.
I'm going to stop you there.
Please stop me there.
Yeah.
I'll keep going for an hour.
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about. Chef Ivan, do you want to give us your perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I think we've heard in Dan's talk, and also just speaking now to Cliff, the word relationship is of paramount importance, I think. And as I think the talks progress, we'll keep hearing this and the feedback and relationship and all of that. Nuri uses about anywhere between 40 to 60% of products that are grown in 2 farms now in Cameron Highlands, Malaysia. We don't allows a bit too far, but and these vegetables are also transported by land, and I've been working with some of these farms for the better part of the last 4 years, and I think the bigger point for me is to communicate for the wider chef audience how revelatory and life-changing it has been professionally for me to be involved in a project like this. As I started cooking, my restaurant is in Singapore, by the way, and as I started cooking in Singapore with my first restaurant project, I consider myself a pencil behind the ear chef. And I think for some of us that might ring a bell. You just dream a dish in your head and you order it after service. Oh, I'd like this, and I like that, and I like this. And continuously for my life as a cook, this is how I've seen dishes come about. You essentially have a very ethereal connection with an idea, a feeling. You see something you like to try somewhere on TV or walking on a market, and suddenly you catch yourself with a little pen and paper going, supplier, I like this, that, and the other. And I've always noticed that that product left some sort of gap. There was a creative gap, and I didn't really know what that gap was. It's almost like the moment you materialize the dish and it's out of your way, there's no life in it anymore. And when I started working with the farm, it was a really painful project for me to begin with, especially because some of the farmers, some who are here present today, were really sticky about how you need to work with the farm. And now I understand why. I think the thing that has changed the most for me was the ability to actually realize that by having this relationship, by being open to interact with products that you're not necessarily dreaming about. You know, the farm has this, the farm dictates it, the season dictates it, the quality of the product, the fact that it's either too green or too sweet or not sweet enough. That has creatively an incredible impact on people the moment you accept and you change the way you approach creativity, approach cooking. So I'd say over the first year, I would just order kilos of specific things like carrots, for example. You're connected to those products. You grow up eating carrots, you know how to use them. You perhaps order some herbs, you know how to use them, and you make dishes about that thing that you know. But suddenly you catch yourself maybe eating too many carrots for a staff meal, and you're wondering, like, do I need all this? You know, how are you gonna? And then suddenly it clicks. You need to use it. And that moment when you accept the fact that you're working in a relationship in tandem with a person growing vegetables for you too, that moment you go, okay, maybe I'll ferment, maybe I'll dry, maybe I'll change, maybe I'll make a pudding. Oh, wait a second, this thing that worked yesterday doesn't work anymore, but now it's slimy. If I spread that thin and dehydrate, will it become crunchy? And suddenly you're actually cooking. Cooking in a way that you've never cooked before. Not in like a bookish kind of way, but you're cooking like I think our forefathers were cooking. People that were pulling stuff out of the ground first time and going, how the hell do I use this? Or eating it and dying because it was poisonous. But there is something incredibly refreshing about that. And that creative gap that I mentioned earlier suddenly disappears. Then you feel like you're connected a lot more to what you're growing. And mind you, I'm in Singapore, which is a super urban, very little farming. Bjorn is here, and you hear from him later on how challenging it is to actually champion a project of farming something in a very dense urban center. I'm not close to the farm necessarily. It's an 8-hour drive from Cameron Highlands, or sometimes 12-hour drive from Cameron Highlands all the way down to Singapore. But the fact that I can't just say, you know what, next week, I'm not going to take those carrots anymore, so please cancel. They're going to die. They're in the ground. You need to take them. And the fact that you need to means you need to start using this thing. And I think the pencil behind the ear chef, me, a few years back, that guy wasn't really in tune with that. We don't necessarily ask these questions. What happens to the rest of the product, the rest of the animal, right? So that's changed a lot for me. Cooking and creating dishes has been easier in that regard because the material is dictating your direction and you're working in connection with something that is much greater than your egoic kind of drive to just do something funky. You know, it's actually real. That stuff's real. So the restaurant tries to work with that, but it's not about that, which is another thing that I wanted to talk about. It doesn't necessarily mean that farm to table becomes your concept. It just means that it is a part of your concept.
Ivan,
No, yeah,
can I cut you off?
that was a good ending.
Yeah, it's great. I'm actually listening, believe it or not. Basically, we are very cut for time, so I'm going to put forward a question to both of you. And basically, this is really coming from this huge farm-to-table movement, field-to-table, nose-to-tail, all these kind of buzzwords, buzz phrases that are coming out. And taking it away from the PR side and really in terms of reality as a producer that's tied to seasons, that's tied to soil types, that's tied to inputs, that's tied to available seeds, what have you. And somebody who uses the product for his customers that demands quality, that demands variety, that wants it now. How do you guys kind of reconcile this for the future? This is going to be a perpetual challenge on how we as producers deal with buyers. And perhaps just to prime this discussion, what I would like you perhaps to focus on is processing on farm. So bring back some of the processing rather than doing it all in the kitchen at the restaurant and really looking at crops as ingredients. How would you deal with this? You have like 30 seconds.
David.
Ready? Go.
Go!
Is quality or quantity a main issue in terms of supply?
Well, both sometimes. I think for the chef that cooks with the pencil behind the back, quantity becomes a major issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to have enough to make that sustain your week, your month, and you don't necessarily have the time all the time to change menus and be inventive. And guests also want to try the same dish, or they heard of a dish that you made yesterday and come back for it, and suddenly it's not there anymore. So quantity is a bigger factor.
It's kind of imperative. It's a cornerstone of a relationship is to be reliable.
Yeah, you kind of need that. But at the same time, if the chef changes his mindset and the restaurant has a different concept altogether, then perhaps that issue is maintained. Sometimes if you don't have it, just use something else that is equally nice. And I think your success with Bunker, for example, is more on that front, right? Being able and flexible to take something else out.
Using more diversity ingredients, but I think it would help more if you knew in advance what the changing season was going to be delivering.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be talking about processing on farm, but
That's all right. Keep going.
all I can see is that it requires infrastructure and expertise, and often chef and farmer are too far separated geographically in order to get it to the precision that would be required.
Of course.
I think as a chef, the one thing that kind of rings true to me every time we talk about this is that the job of a farmer and the job of a chef are very different. And to confuse these two things is to make this entire operation very complicated. I deal with ingredients, and you grow product.
The best
right?
way is to
food, and that reading that was very illuminating for me. The idea that the job of a chef is not necessarily to just take the best strawberry ever, put it on the plate, because that's just a bridge, really. You're a bridge between farmer and guest, when the reality is there's no stamp. Whereas you as a chef, whereas your skill imbued in what you're making. The job of a chef, I think, is dictated by his ability to take a not so good strawberry and make something great out of it. And this is this is not me saying let's use crappy products and give them to guests, but it's me saying that as a chef, we need to be mindful that I think a lot of the times we pay so much attention and focus about highlighting provenance and making sure that the guest understands how pristine this particular parsnip is from this organic farm, and we just shave it and put it with a little bit of lemon oil. And it's tasty, don't get me wrong, but the filter through which your experience is shown, that is the job of a chef. And to remember this keeps me on my toes in regards to maybe I will have to use a kohlrabi that is not as sweet as a Danish kohlrabi, which is what I was used to when I was in Denmark, right? Maybe I'll just have to figure something else out. And your style of cooking starts to change, and perhaps that's great fermented and it's not good fresh. And you have to be open to that. And I think skill is in there for a chef, whereas skill for a farmer is to iron all those kinks and be able to produce the best vegetable that he can. The skill for a chef is to take whatever vegetable that he's able to, obviously aiming for quality at its best all the time, and produce the best dish that he could possibly produce. And not to confuse this, for me, it's really important. Did I just totally...
I just want to add something in there. You've had a fair bit of one-to-one interaction with your suppliers on their properties, right? So you understand where they're coming from, what they're experiencing. Has that been reciprocal?
No, and that's a very fair point. I think most of the times farmers don't understand the reality of a restaurant. And
I want to start closing this gap here.
yeah.
I'm actually going to start closing the conversation over here. So I need to end your time.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Pull on the plug.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's
So
go
thank you
party.
very much. Unfortunately, there's no time for questions from the audience. The next group is already standing, ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you very much for your time. If anybody would like to speak to the two gents afterwards, please, by all means, find them and talk to them. Thank you very much.
So ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Clifton, Ivan, and Bryan. Thank you.